Hola, hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine Chisme podcast. And guess what? It is Financial Literacy Month here, April, and we have Erika Dox-Martinez, founder and CEO of Blissful Vida. How are you, Erika?
I'm doing so great today. So happy to be here. Thank you.
I was just telling you right before we hit record that it makes my heart so happy that we now have so many Latinas that are talking about financial health, but talking about financial literacy, how to get out of debt. And everybody, the thing is like everybody talks a little bit different about it, right? And you resonate with people, with different people. So what somebody may have resonated previously, they might get something else from this, or maybe they're like, oh wait, I just didn't vibe with that one, but I vibe with this person. So
Yes.
that's why I think it's so important that we continue to have these conversations. So I am so excited that
Yes.
yeah.
Me too. So much. So thank you for having me. And it is really important to have the different perspectives when it comes to money and different backgrounds and different people talking about it, because other people or will resonate with different people depending on what they're going through, what they're feeling, and how their emotions act upon their habits when it comes to money.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into all that
Yeah.
financial always start with the wine, because would we be wine and cheese if we didn't have the wine? No.
Of course not.
Okay. So are you drinking a Cabernet? Because you did tell me your favorite wine was a Cabernet. So what are you drinking today?
I do love Cabernet, but I'm drinking 19 Crimes red blend that is aged in 30 days rum barrel, 30-day aged wine,
Ooh,
which is really, really good. So this has been one of my go-tos recently. I've been loving it. And I would say last week they were out of stock, and I bought a whiskey barrel one from another company, and I would say, no bueno.
yeah, like I haven't had one. I don't think I've had one out of a rum barrel. I've had some out of whiskey barrels. I do appreciate, I mean, I just like wine. Let's just be honest. But I
Me
like
too.
the complexities that you get when you get like those whiskey barrels, or like I said, I'm now that makes me want to try it because I want a barrel. I'm actually it's fine. Our sunshine has come through back in San Diego again, and it was nice, and I took a walk, and I was like having my lunch looking at the bay. Yes, be jealous, please be jealous. That's kidding.
I am jealous because I'm in New York, so it's freezing over here right now.
And so I'm having a Sancerre, um and it is basically a Loire white wine. It's like a French, it comes from the French area of Sancerre. So it's a white wine. This is the first time I've tried it. So oh, it smells so good. It smells like
Nice.
what's the okay, so I have this, my little wheel, and like you can kind of see it.
Okay. Yep.
It's the wine aroma wheel. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm trying to use it more as, especially for oh god, that just smells so good. And to me, it's definitely because I'm not a bit, it's kind of has oh, what's that one? It's not honeysuckle, because actually I had one the other day that I was like, oh, I think it smells, it's like honeysuckle. And then I think we have that as soon as you say it, you're like, oh yes, that's what it tastes like, or that's what it smells like, right? But
Yeah.
this one is definitely a little green. Lychee, that's what I smell.
Oh, I love lychee.
Yes,
Okay.
lychee and apple. Oh, and it smells a little herbaceous as well. A little, oh, that's good. So, salud.
Yes. Cheers. We're
There
clinking.
we go. I had my other finger on it, and messed it up. Oh, this is going to be a really amazing summer wine. But like I said, I got it today because it's nice. I know you said you like cabs. So we actually met at our New York, at the Wine and Chisme live podcast event in New York, because you came, which
Yes.
first of all, thank you so much for
You're
coming.
welcome. It was my
Like before,
pleasure.
like, so, at the events, we have like cheese and charcuterie. We have wines from our Latino wine brands. We had a musical performance by Jazzy Amra, who actually was on Jimmy Fallon recently.
Really? She was
Yes,
amazing.
performing with Wyclef Jean.
Nice.
Was it with Wyclef? I think it was with Wyclef. And then we had the panel. So let me ask you, because I haven't, like, how did you find out? What brought you? What did you think of the event and the wine that we had from our Latino vintners?
The wine was amazing. As always, wine is one of my favorite things in the world. So I definitely love that. And I love that they were from a Latina. Were they New York based as well?
One was New York based. One FedEx failed to deliver on time. So we were
Oh,
actually missing an entire case of wine. And one is out of Lodi, Say Solis. So we had
oh,
RGNY,
nice.
which is out of the North Fork of Long Island. You need to go.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful place. And then we had Say Solis, which is out of Lodi, here in the northern inland California.
Perfect. Yeah, and the brie on the chisme was amazing. That was like so beautiful. I love that spread for the charcuterie board, or however you say that word.
Yes.
The whole
She
event was
provided
great.
cones. Yeah, it was so
Very
thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming. I'm
Yeah,
so
when you
like it
come
makes me.
back, let me know and I will bring my squad again. So I will be there.
Yes. Well, let me just say, and because it's so nice to have somebody like who I didn't meet beforehand, who I didn't know beforehand, right? Who came, and I will say this, like I started crying while Jazzy was singing because I was so overwhelmed because when you're in the middle of things, you being an entrepreneur yourself as well, like when you're in the middle of things, you're just doing something, let's get it done, whatever. And then you take a moment to actually take it in,
Hmm.
and you're like, literally, it was like, oh, I'm in New York and this is my event.
Yes,
This
girl.
is my event and I'm in New York.
You're doing the things.
And it was like that
Surreal.
moment. Yes, it was so surreal. It was like I had to catch my breath. Honestly, I had to step away. I started like tearing up. I had to catch my breath because I was just so involved with the process
Yeah.
that at that moment is when it finally hit me. And then when I had so many people after say, come back, we want you back. And also had people say, do you know how hard it is to get people in New York, not only to an event, but to an event where you have to pay? We want you to come back. And I was like,
Yes, for sure. For sure. But that song was really good and emotional too. I think she definitely teared me up. I don't remember what the song was or what she talked about, but I know it was definitely like I felt it and it was such a
yeah,
great song. So it was amazing. The whole event was amazing. Now you had Cindy Castro there too, which is you looked
yes. And I
beautiful
was
in
wearing
her.
her top, which
Yes.
was, girl, that top I was wearing was the softest thing I have ever worn in my entire life.
Yes.
That thing was like butter.
Well, shout out to Cindy. So I have one of
That
her
obviously, and
dresses too.
now you're here, and now
Yes.
you're a guest.
Yes. Awesome. So
I'm
I'm
so,
I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
oh, well, thank you for coming. Well, like I said, it is Financial Literacy Month. And, it's like I said, it's a conversation we need to continue to have about finances. Um, earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, we're talking about how to get out of debt, because I think, there's been a lot of like just do a little bit here, invest a little bit here, and less. And look, I am the first to admit that I don't do as much as I need to do. And I think so many of us are in that boat, right? We know it. We
Mhm.
know we have to do it. We're not quite sure where to start. We hear all this information. It can get very overwhelming. But I kind of like I'm going to push back to the thing and just really want to talk first about, like, do you recall your family's relationship with money, or if that was ever discussed growing up? Like, what was that relationship with your family and money, and how did you start like
Mhm.
getting that relate like what was your first relationship with money?
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up with my mom. My mom and dad split. So I grew up with my mom. My brother grew up with my dad. And our family dynamic, from what I remember, was very credit card heavy. So it was like buy now, pay later, later. And I picked that up as well. So when I went away to college, not having any financial tools, I also had that mentality because I really didn't understand interest and how it adds up so quickly. So when I graduated from college, I had $25,000 worth of credit card debt on top of my student loans. So
Wow.
yeah, so that was like very overwhelming. I graduated from school. I think I was making 36 to $40,000 right out of college in New York City. So it's like, okay, now I have to navigate paying student loans and paying back this credit card debt. And you do what you can, right? But the interest eats up a lot of the payments. So you're getting nowhere fast. So that was one part of growing up on my mom's side. My dad's side was more, he's like, well, I'm Boricua. So he always said, we're Puerto Ricans. We're Puerto Ricans. Like not Puerto Ricans, we're Puerto Ricans. So I'm like, he has some money trauma he needs to resolve on that side. But I grew up, thinking we weren't like poor, but we weren't well to do. Like we were okay, but we also were living on borrowed money. So
Yeah.
I definitely grew up thinking that, okay, that's what I saw growing up and that's okay. So that shifted a lot when I met my husband, who had no debt at all when I met him.
It's always
So
so interesting, right? When you go through that, because similarly, well, I will say this. Mine was me and my sisters, or I will say for me, I can't speak for my sisters. It was the checks, right?
mm,
And I don't even remember the last time I wrote a check, to be perfectly honest, anymore. But it was the checks where my mom would pay bills with the checks or write a check at a department store to do everything. And to me, yes, check is a form of payment, right? But I just equated check to like instant money. And
mhm,
so we'd want something, and and I would just say, Mom, just write a check.
yeah,
Well, why don't you? Because she'd be like, we don't have any money,
mhm,
right? We weren't poor. We weren't, we were just we were just very middle class. And
mhm,
then we probably moved to like mid to upper middle class eventually. But
yeah,
I also think like, unfortunately, there's just like the middle class continues to shrink and shrink and shrink.
oh yeah,
You be almost like you almost have to be making six figures. You have to be making six figures to be middle class anymore. But and I would tell my mom this, and she'd be like, Mija, you have to have money in the bank. And
right,
I think I didn't quite, I mean, I got it and I didn't, right? Um, my first experience of managing money in any way was, I think, when we do odd jobs or we get like birthday money or um whether it's money from friends or relatives or whatever, or you start working and then you get money. What was
mhm,
your first, well, first of all, before I ask this question,
yeah,
the fact that your dad, you're so right, the trauma that's attached to what he just said, that you're Puerto Ricans, like that's a mentality that gets passed down, because
mhm,
even if you don't think, and I've heard this from so many people, like they didn't realize that their family didn't have money. They didn't realize this until they went to college or until they went here or there and realize, oh, wait. And it's so interesting to hear, like, so many families do what they can, just like you said, do everything that they can. And that's just what you know. And oftentimes, if parents don't acknowledge the quote, like, then you don't realize that you're poor, right?
right,
You're like, this is what life is. And
mhm,
sometimes you struggle, sometimes you don't, but all right, cool. You don't, but as soon as that mentality hits, man, that changes. I think that changes everything. If you're like, I'm
for
poor,
sure. Yes,
right?
I
Uh,
agree.
so what was your
And
first, like, experience with handling your own money?
well, I started working at 14 years old. I don't know if that's like a pastime because I'm not sure the kids working that young anymore, but I started making money because I wasn't getting too much in allowance. My mom's like, you want things, you have to go out and get money and pay for it yourself. So that was my first job. I think it was Baskin Robbins, and I worked at the supermarket and then a bagel store until I went off to college. And all those times, I remember my mom telling me though, when I was working in high school, to save 10% of my money coming in. So I know I did that before I went to
Oh,
college.
mom.
Yeah, and shocking, yeah, which was, I don't know, because that didn't stick though, and I wish that that did stick because that is a principle I like to promote now. It's pay yourself first. So I did take that 10% of the income that I made, and I did save that. So when I went away to college, I did have a little bit of money, but that money went quick. Like this, once I moved out and went to college, because I didn't know how to manage my money. And then once the money ran out, I was okay. I'm a lot old. I don't know how old you are. I'm 44. So back when I was in college,
46.
okay.
We
So
check.
then, okay, then when we were 18 years old, it's different now, but they were giving out credit cards like hotcakes back then. Anybody, you want a free t-shirt, you get a credit card. Like it wasn't like now where you have to they check your credit, they decline you, and it's a little tougher. It's not that hard, but it's not as easy as when we were younger. So I had credit cards just piling up and just spending, spending, spending. So I think with the mentality, like you said, with the money trauma that is passed down sometimes from our parents, and I saw my mom using her credit. My dad told me I was a Puerto Rican. So you don't want to feel that, like, and I think this is a money trauma type thing that you have to dig into. It's like, all right, I don't want to appear as a Puerto Rican, so let me spend money like I'm not, because I don't want people to know that or think that. So this comes back to a lot of work that I do, which is definitely talking about money trauma, money stories, because that got me to spend a lot more. But also, I think a lot of my money stories too, if we don't talk about completely right now, but I equated spending money with love. So I would like spend a lot on other people because I wanted love or wanted to show them I love them. So that was like another reason I think I equated like how come my credit card debt accumulated so fast or to be so much, because I was just spending for these psychological reasons. I really didn't understand why because I didn't dig into that. So that's the work that I do now, is more like, hey, let's dig into why your habits are what they are, and let's uncover the reasonings behind that so we can work on replacing those limiting beliefs with something that's more empowering. Like, I'm not a Puerto Rican, maybe our family struggled, but they did the best that they could. And I think growing
Yeah.
up, one more thing, growing up in Latino culture too, our parents were just trying to put food on the table. They're trying to survive. And, they weren't taught to thrive, like, or build wealth. Like, it was just like, we need to make money to put food on the table and you guys are taken care of, go to school, you have what you need. But it wasn't like, a surplus was not really the goal. And I think now we're trying to, close the gaps when it comes to wealth. So we want to teach our culture and teach our people more how to utilize the tools that are out there to build wealth, like the rich people do, right? So I think that's another point. It's kind of like, okay, what kind of life? Well, Blissful Vida is my company. So what encompasses a Blissful Vida for you, and what do you need to live that life? So I provide strategies and tools to help you live the Blissful Vida that you want to live. But those tools are not really taught to us growing up, or they're kept from us, or society, or they don't want you to thrive in those spaces. So that's more of like what I've learned in looking at my trauma of growing up and like the things that were passed down from my parents. So I have the Puerto Rican from my dad's side, credit card usage on my mom's side. And even though she did tell me to save that 10%, that didn't stick. But when I graduated from college, with all my debt, I remember learning, and I'm not sure from who or where, that you can't save money while you have debt because of the interest rate on your debt. So that's another like limiting belief and kept me living paycheck to paycheck. So
Right.
just digging into all these things kind of like helped me, break out of that and like finally come out of the situation I was in. And I'm happy to say I'm no longer in debt, and I have built out a lot of wealth in terms of retirement and investing. I learned how to do all those things that I want more of us to do, because it's really important to, tell those people, fuck you, I can figure this out too.
You know what? I'm just thinking back to the different people that we've had talk about money. And man, it's like every single time it's like another thing is dropped, right? When we had like Miss Be Helpful, when Yaneli, like talk about, oh, yes, she's been on the podcast as well,
Yes.
talking about like really teaching um financial literacy in high school and even before, and talking about that in her and having courses for that. And then Maida talking about how to get out of debt, because we've talked about all these other things, but actually how we get it. Now you're talking about like how do we really figure out the trauma that has made us get into. girl, all of
Yes.
these things just go together. You
Yes.
guys, yeah, mi gente, seriously, you need to listen to all of these because like you, I don't know if you're seeing in my eyes, like tick, 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 like all like I literally had to go back and listen to all of the episodes kind of together. I think that is so that's why I love this because everybody has different perspectives. Everybody has
Mhm.
different kind of specialties. And if we harness all of our stuff together and all of that knowledge, oh my gosh,
Yes.
that
We
is,
gotta all work together as a collective and do some kind of like retreat or something.
yes. And if you guys do not, if you're only listening to the audio, like Erica could see me, and I swear you probably see like the light bulb going on top
Yes.
of my head.
I love it. I love it. So I recently did a trauma of money cohort. So I'm going to be certified in that, but it really talks about a lot of this what I'm speaking about too, and a lot of how society, keeps holds us back, and advertising is a big part of it, and just these different aspects of like why our habits are what they are. And um I think like a lot of us have a fear of looking at our money situation too, because that stems from, it causes a lot of emotional things to come up too. So I think that stems from like talking about money is taboo. Like we need to normalize talking about money a little bit more. So thank you for giving us the platform to do that.
Oh my gosh. I 100% agree, right? Like there's so many people saying don't talk about this, don't talk about money, don't talk about how much you make with your coworkers. But how do you expect me to say you don't want me to talk about money? Well, I am my coworker now because but I mean you people don't want you to talk about money with your coworkers because they don't want you to realize what the gap actually is.
100%. I was just saying that the other day. So it's like, yeah, if we're all talking about it, then you're going to say, hey, that person makes more than me. We do the same job. That guy makes $20,000 more than me. Why? And then you start questioning, and the corporations don't want you to like start figuring this out, how they're really like screwing us over at the end of the day. But if we normalize talking about this, then it will help close the gap. Like we need to start talking about money, because that would help the situation so much more versus like, oh, that's disrespectful or you shouldn't do that. But it's only benefiting them, it's not benefiting us. So that's
Yes.
where we have to like you're saying, let's
And
have the conversation.
honestly have the conversation. Like I've had the conversation with my parents, right? My parents are both in their 60s, so they're not old by all means, but they will get old. They will. And I'm constantly like, you guys need to come up with a plan. You need to do like, don't create a trust. Don't just have a will. You need to create a trust. You need to do this. And then my mom's been trying to have these conversations with my dad, and my dad is like, oh yeah, 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 we'll get to, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like so I feel like he's still kind of, even though he's first gen, he still like has still a very much like old school Mexican mentality, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, but which is interesting because growing up, like we went through, and my mom doesn't listen to this, so I can say these things, or else she might be like, Jay, I can't believe this. But like growing up, we also, my mom also had like a shopping problem, right?
Mm.
And it's something that they figured this out, but there was a moment where, and I think a lot of couples go through this because they say money is like the number one reason for divorce between couples, or the number one thing that pulls couples apart.
Mhm.
And figuring, and so you have to have those conversations. What is your spending, what is versus my spending? I'm going through this right now with, you know by the when this launches, I think we'll be like a week away from my wedding when this drops.
Oh wow.
So it'll be the month of the wedding, but that's something that we're also going through in regards to spending habits. And we've had to change a lot since I got let go from my job last
Mhm.
May. That's an entire like
Yeah.
50% of our combined income was gone.
Yeah.
And now having to adjust, continually having to adjust our lifestyle accordingly,
Yeah.
because I'm the type of person, like, I like to save, I like to pay off my bills, I like to do all that, but then at the same time I like to be like, if I want it, and like, I don't want to have to think. If
Yeah.
it's super expensive, it's one thing. But if it's something that I'm like, oh, I want this, I want to be able to get it.
Hmm.
Right. To a certain extent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend like, I'm not going to spend like $1,500 on a pair of shoes for my wedding, which I did see. And I was like, it's more than a dress. You're freaking crazy.
I hear you. I hear you.
But even all of those big things, I think it also starts when we're young, right? Because how many times do we see, um, do you do quinceañeras for in the Puerto Rican community?
They do, but I didn't have one
I didn't have, my parents told me
personally.
I could have a
So,
quinceañera or a car.
mm.
And I
So
said, broom, broom, baby.
yeah, yeah, I didn't have the option. Like that was just not even an option financially for us. So I
But
got
how
no
many
car and no
families?
quinceañera. But
Yeah,
yeah,
how many families like that's where like a lot of first experiences with money come, right? Their family are spending as much on a quinceañera than they do on a wedding,
yes, it
and
could be.
they can't necessarily afford it,
Right.
right? Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. Oftentimes it's a lot of family that's pitching in,
Hmm.
but I think a lot of times that's the uh like a first experience with money, and it's a very lavish experience that
Oh yeah.
happens during this time. So
Yep.
when do you think those conversations need to start happening, like, or how do you even realize? Because I think if you're a teenager, if you're 14, I don't think oftentimes you're, maybe now, I don't know, maybe I need to talk to my nephews and find out what they think, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah,
how do you feel about that? Like, that's oftentimes a first experience for a lot of young girls
100%.
with I don't know, money, because
It's
they're like,
what
I
they
want this dress.
see. Yeah, of course. So I think it needs to start young because the schools are not doing the work that how they should be doing the work, especially I don't know about elementary school, but high school definitely not. Like how you said, like Gianelli is really big on promoting financial education and having the states really push this through in her organization. And I really like commend that because we graduate from high school at 17, 18 years old when you're an adult going on into real world in college and expecting to even graduate from college, you don't know what to do or how to manage your money because nobody's showing you or teaching you. But I don't know if the schools are thinking the parents are doing that because a lot of parents are not managing their money well, and we kind of like emulate what we see growing up. We either do that or we do the opposite. So it's up to us to decide, do we want to live like our parents did or not? So I grew up seeing credit card used and I spent, I did do the same thing. My husband grew up without credit cards, so he didn't have any credit cards growing up, or just even now. Like, so it's great that for that. But for my kids, I have stepkids through my husband, and the youngest is 15. And I do speak to them about more so like saving and investing. Because I'm like, if I would have done it at your age, and I used to smoke cigarettes back for a long time, like 20 years. Or I don't know. I don't know if I should even say that on here, but don't listen,
Be
kids.
honest, it's okay.
But I broke it down, and I remember when I used to have my budgets back in the day when I was smoking, and I would track my money, which I like to say is a really good thing to do. And I will put W next to every time I bought cigarettes, which is waste. I put waste of money, W. Like it was, I knew I was wasting my money. And I went back recently and I sat one of my sons down and I was like, look, if I would have taken all that money that I spent wasting on cigarettes and invested it, this is how much money I would have now. And I kind of like showed him on a graph and like, look at this. We'd had a calculation with the stock market and it's insane. So I'm like even sad how much money I wasted on that. But I just want to show them, like, if you're making these choices young, because I don't know, now is the vaping is like the new thing. So if the kids are like, hey, let's spend our money on that, I'm like, okay, if you put your money towards something good, you can have a lot more money when you grow up and you'll be able to live the lifestyle that you want, or all those nice fancy things that you see that they want you to want to buy. And you can actually afford them instead of using your money, or using credit or borrowed money to get them. So I think the conversation should happen younger, but parents need to be open with their money situation as well. And I think because their parents didn't have that, it's hard to do it. But we need to break the cycles as generations, like, okay, I'm going to do this differently. So even for me, like I went out to a karate dojo in Spanish Harlem for kids, and I did a budgeting dojo for them, like a workshop on money, because money and discipline like kind of go hand in hand. And they were like so receptive to it. And they kind of understood, hey, this is what my mom and dad have to do. They get this amount of money and they have to decide this much goes to housing, this much goes to food, this much goes to transportation. So they had to do the activity themselves. And I think if we allow our kids to see how money works in the household, that they would, have a little more respect for money and know how to manage it and navigate it when they get older and have their own money. But the schools are not really teaching this yet. I think it's going to get better. And like, that's why my company, Blissful Vida, we do workshops for teens as well. So I love to go to I want to go to high schools. I'm going to like go and do workshops for them. So I've done for the YWCA, and I did the kids workshop for Spanish Harlem. So I'm kind of like wanting to educate more young people. And I'm going to colleges too, to kind of like speak on this, because it's kind of like, let's pay more attention to being conscious about our money and intentional with our money. And what do we really want to do with our money to live a more blissful life? Like, we're not meant to be here struggling and doing the things that we've seen, like maybe seeing our parents do or our family doing. So it's kind of like, let's change the narrative. We are capable of doing this. It just takes a little bit of work. Like how you're saying, it's like, I think a lot of us avoid our finances sometimes, but if we can just like take it upon ourselves to want to do better, we are capable of doing better. And that's why like it's so important what I'm trying to put out there and help people accomplish and do, because I was struggling in debt and I got out of it. And now I'm like how you said, if I want something, I don't want to have to look at my bank account to get it. Like, I want to be like, all right, I know I got it. I'm good. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. I was, but I'm not anymore. And that to me was financial freedom, not being rich, So I think there's a difference of being rich and having money and
Totally
wealth.
agree.
Right. So it's kind of like, what does that mean to you to be wealthy, to feel abundant? It's kind of like you have to decide that for yourself. And that's more like, what's your blissful vida look like in that landscape too? And live in that space and, try to get to that space too, because it's possible. It takes a little work. I did have to sacrifice and, cut back on some vacations. Sometimes I got my tax return money. I didn't go splurge it. I had to pay my bills with it. And then after a while, my money was mine. So like, to go back to when I met my husband and he had no debt. So
Wait,
when
can I ask you what
yeah,
ethnicity your husband is?
he's Salvadorian.
Okay. Just because I feel like sometimes that helps give like a little context,
Yeah.
just so, okay,
Yeah.
continue. Sorry.
So I met him 29. So I was like swimming in my debt still from college, which was that was 8 years later. And I would give him my credit cards to hold for me when he swears I froze some credit cards so I wouldn't use them. But I was just like, I need to pay this off. Like, I was trying so hard. It wasn't working, but he had no debt. So anytime we go out, I was like, he gets paid, he pays his bills, and he has this much left over to do whatever he wants with, whether he saves it, spends it, or whatever. He has a choice. And I was like, I get my money, I pay my bills, and then all that excess money is going to credit cards and student loans. I didn't feel like my money was my money. I was like, and that's where my fed up moment happened. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm giving them so much free money. And then I turn that around, and on my credit cards are paying me in rewards, and I get a check every month from them. So I'm like, haha, like now you're paying me. So I love, like, I flipped it around, because before, but I was paying them 28% interest. They're paying me 1% to 5%, but
Right.
whatever. I'm like, it's fine. I'll take whatever you're going to give me, because I've given them so much money. So that was like the fed up moment. But my aha moment was more when he proposed and I didn't have any savings, making 6 figures. So I was like, that was kind of like where I felt all the frustration and emotions come in, like, what the hell is wrong with me? And then we go into that spiral, right? So it's kind of like doing the work, but getting out of it too.
Yeah. I want to kind of go back because
Yeah.
when you were saying like not realizing and teaching your kids like where that money comes from, how powerful it can be if you have your kids sit down with you while you're doing the bills, right?
Mhm.
This is how much we have. This is what, bills come out to. And then it reminded me, look, we know what's happened with Bill Cosby. I'm not, but it reminded me from the Cosby Show. Okay, we're taking this in context of the show
Gotcha.
of when Theo wanted to quit school and get a job and move out, and uh he is sitting there with his dad, and his dad's like, okay, how much money you think you're gonna get without a high school diploma. And he's like, let's just say you have this much money. Okay, how much is rent? And he's like, no, okay, I have a room. You know, he's trying to like negotiate in his head. Theo's trying to negotiate in his head, like, well, I'll have a roommate. Oh, well, how much is this? Oh, I'll cook. Oh, how much is it? But every time, like that money's coming out, that money's coming out. And he goes, the last like $40 of the month that he would have, he's like, do you plan to have a girlfriend? He goes, definitely. And he takes all the rest of that money,
I
right?
love it. Yes, and that's such a good lesson because I think I don't know if kids really understand how much it really is to cost, how much it really costs to live on your own out there. It's not like you're living at home, you're kind of spoiled in a sense where your parents pay for the food, electricity, your Wi-Fi, like all of that has to be taken into account, plus rent. And I think unfortunately the rent prices are going up, our incomes are not going up as much as rent. I don't even know how kids live out on their own, so I think that's why
I
a
don't
lot
think
more of
they
them
are. I think,
yeah, I think a lot more of them are home for longer because it's really tough out there and it's expensive.
yeah, that's and it just keeps getting more and more, which is like a whole nother thing, right? Because we have a lot of big corporations buying up blocks of homes and buying up all this. And it's just a whole other issue in
Conversation.
regards to that whole other conversation. That's for sure. But you were talking about how your husband did not have any debt. And when he proposed and you're like, and you get married and you're like, crap, I'm making six figures and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, which I think honestly is the reality of so many people, even
Yeah.
myself. I had some money saved up and then unemployment. And as I was trying to look for a job and then also trying to make things work with the podcast, or actually not work, things are great with the podcast, maybe
Yes.
not with the finances with the podcast. I will be very honest in saying that it's not easy.
Okay.
And we have a whole episode that we were talking about like how entrepreneurship sucks but doesn't at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah.
I feel you. I feel you on that.
um but it's that, you know, that money does not go as far as it used to. That money went very quick. All that money I had saved up, bye. And to
Yeah.
be perfectly honest, if I didn't have like my fiance, he had just moved in a few months before we'd moved in together. And if that wasn't the case, I don't know what I would have done. Right. And these are not things that I'm like proud of sharing. I think it's necessary to share so people know
Hmm.
that they're not alone.
Of
It's not
course.
something, it's, you know, I've cried over it many of times because I've always been somebody who's prided herself on taking care of myself and not needing anybody else
Yes.
and doing it all on my own. But then when you know you enter a partnership, it changes things.
Yeah.
and and even now I get those moments where I feel so bad that I'm not contributing financially as much as I used to, right? We used to be very like almost 50-50 in what we brought in, right? We were bring home pretty good money, and then
Hmm.
that gets slashed. And then you're here saying you felt very similar in the fact that you were still living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
What was that? I know you said that was your aha moment, but then what was the first thing that you did for yourself that started to turn that around? Because I think you can only do
Hmm.
one thing at a time, right? You can't
100%.
focus on all of the things or else nothing will
Yeah.
get done.
Yeah. So first of all, what I did was make the decision to get out of debt. Like I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be in an even playing field with my husband where my money comes in and it's my money and I can decide what I want to do with that. So with that, I had to restructure my budget. I was always paying more than minimum, but it still wasn't getting me out of there fast enough. So when tax return money came, my bonuses came, majority of that went to paying off my debt. So that was my, like the first step was deciding and coming up with a plan. Okay, these big chunks of money I'm going to put to my debt. I'm going to make a decision to do that instead of going on vacation like I usually would or would have decided to do before. So that was like step one. And I'm not saying I put all of that money. I'm here to promote a blissful vida. So maybe I'll take 20%, I keep for me, 80% goes to my bills. And when I got down to the last 10,000, so this is my credit card debt, not my student loans. I took a loan against my 401k to pay that off because the interest rate on that is a lot less than what you're paying on your credit cards. So that's how and then you just pay that back through your paycheck. So I really didn't feel it. And I got out of debt when I was 36 and we got engaged I was 32. So it took me 4 years to pay off all my student loans and my credit card debt. So it's not like a quick fix. So I think people, are like thinking it could happen quick. It takes time, but it takes commitment and you have to really want to do it, but it's possible. But I know it's like a cloud over you and this overwhelming frustration and, anxiety sometimes when it comes to how am I supposed to get out of this freaking hole, because I was in $100,000, over $100,000 debt. That's a lot of money. So it's possible to pay it off and get out of that. So I think that was the first thing that I did, was decide to get out of that. And then from there I learned, like, okay, what are people doing to build wealth or have more money? And I started saving. I got my emergency fund in place first, and then I started to learn how to invest. And that was like the biggest thing to me, because nobody in our family, this is one like another limiting belief, people like us don't invest. That's for rich people. Like that was another belief I had. So it's kind of like, is that true? No, that's not true. We can learn how to do it. We can navigate that space too. Because I remember when I was in college, so I was in the tax field before I decided to go on my entrepreneurship journey. And I did someone's taxes who made $4 million when I was 19, 20 years old at my internship. And I
What?
remember, yeah. So I remember
Ooh,
being mad nosy. I was like, let me see how this guy made all his money. And a lot
you're
of
on the right podcast.
yeah. So I was like, and looking for the chisme. And I was like, okay, a lot of his money came from investing. So, that was always in the back of my mind. I didn't know what that meant at that time at 20. But when I got to be 30 something and I was able to have the money that was extra to do the things I wanted to do with my money, I was like, all right, I'm going to start investing. And that's what I did. So I don't invest in anything too crazy. I just invest in the S&P 500 because that's what Warren Buffett said is the thing to do as a beginner. So that's where most of my money is. So I think that's like, for me, that feels comfortable and safe, because then, another thing we believe is the stock market is scary. It's hard. It's this and it's that. And it's not that complicated. It's just like, hey, let's give it a shot. This is what the rich people are doing with their money, and they don't want us to do this. So we got to do the things that they don't want us to do so that we can even out the playing field and get to where we need to go financially and not feel so crazy.
So you mentioned Warren Buffett in regards to that. Who were the people that you looked to? Because I feel like even 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of Latinos talking about this. I'm
Mm-mm.
sure there were some but I'm gonna be totally honest. I don't remember any like having any Latino voices in regards to investing, in regards to getting out of debt, in regards to any of that. So who were the people that you looked to when you started really researching what to do to get not I think I don't know if you listen to anybody in regards to getting out of debt, because it sounds like you pretty much made that decision on your own. And I think that's just figuring out, like, do you pay the lowest balance, the lowest interest rate?
Mm-hmm.
What's like I feel
Yeah.
like something you can do on your own. But when it came to
Yeah.
the investing part, who were the places that you looked to help before you started doing that?
Yeah. I don't know if it was more of a who versus just online Googling, because that was a while ago. I don't remember seeing anybody, or the space wasn't like how it is now. There was no YouTube, I don't think, back then, or podcasts, or there probably were, but I wasn't listening to anything. So it's kind of like, all right, I want to learn how to invest. Where do I go? I just Googled like how to invest and just took the way that was the most easiest and simplest for me. And I just opened an account at Fidelity. So that seemed reasonable. That seemed, effective, cost efficient. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing half the time when it came to it back then. So I was like, this is the space I'm going to go to. And that's where my investments still are to this day. So I think we do need more of us speaking about it and putting it out there and to teach. So I know now there's like a lot of people, how you're saying, like, there's me and there's Yang Lee. I know, I'm trying to think of other Latinas.
I need to get you connected with my debt-free Latina.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I would love that. But it's
Actually, I
more
have a
like,
couple others that I should just connect you guys all. I need to send like a little thing saying, "Hey, I like the power again, like we were saying at the very beginning, right? This collective power of knowledge
mhm,
is so amazing
for
that
sure.
now I like literally as you're talking and I'm thinking of different things of how we, to
I would
put
love
all
that.
of these episodes together so people have like a resource for finances or a resource for this or a resource for
Yes.
that to be able to
Yeah.
kind of put that together.
Really good. I know another one for investing who's popping up lately, Linda Garcia. So the Wealth
Oh yeah,
Warrior.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she's big on talking about investing in Latinas. So I know for now, like this is happening now in real time. A lot of us are popping up and helping to put out the good word. Like this is stuff that we should be doing, and it's not as scary, but it does help to see others of us doing it, because I think it's 2% of Latinas invest in the stock market or something crazy. Like, so we need more of us to do this, and it's a really great tool. So just to back rewind a little bit, so I ended up quitting my 9 to 5 to pursue my entrepreneurship journey, but I did make sure I was in a good space with enough savings to do so. But that being said, with my husband, we had to kind of shift things around here as well, because my 6 figure income was not coming in. And, starting a business, income is not coming in, or we don't know when it's coming in. It could be good this month, and who knows, this way or that way. So my husband also is like a big support system with that, where I'm like, hey, I have to lean on you a little bit. And like you said, that was really uncomfortable for me too, because I take so much pride in being independent and I was making my money. I was like, I don't need anybody to help me. I'm good financially. You don't have to buy me a drink. You don't have to do this for me. I'm good. I could pay for your dinner. Like, I really took pride in
Same.
being independent woman. And I think that came from my mom too, because I remember back in the day thinking like, oh, I got this guy to pay my bill. And she was like, what the hell? Like, that's not, I don't know where that even came from. But I was like, I don't know. I thought that's like made sense. And she's like, hell no. And then from then on, I was like, I'm good. I'll take care of myself. And I think another thing that traumatized me was one guy bought me a drink once at a bar, and he just like stalked me the whole night. So I was like, never again. I was like,
Girl,
I'm
let me tell you, that is such an ick for me. That was always such an ick for me because same, my mom, so little backstory is, until I was almost 4 years old, it was just me and my mom, right? And then my mom married my dad. He's not my biological dad, but she would always tell me like, Mija, if something happened to your dad, I didn't know. Like, we were fortunate that my dad made enough money, especially back in the early 80s, right? Early and in throughout the 80s, that my dad made enough money. My mom didn't have to work. She stayed home. She freaking was super mom, you
yeah.
know, and but she would always tell me, and I think she told me more so than my sisters, like, if something happened, I don't know, I want you to be independent. I don't want you to ever have to depend on anybody. And so I mean, that definitely like affected me, right? When she told me that. But then growing up, I would get older and I would like a guy would buy me dinner. Okay, that's fine. But I remember the first really like ugh, that I had was I was with some friends at the mall, and this guy comes up to my friend and he goes, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I want to take you shopping." And she's like, "All right, you can take me right now." So he takes us into a store. It's me and her and her roommate. So there's three of us. And he's like, "Get whatever you want." And they're going to town. And I'm literally standing there. I'm not participating in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form. Inside, I felt so gross. And he's like, "Oh, don't you want to get anything?" I'm like, "I'm good, thank you." And I'm maybe 21 at this point. So I'm still young, like, but my mom is like in my head so hard. But I also was just like, I do not want to owe anybody anything.
Yes, that's it.
Like, I don't want any man to feel like because he bought me clothes, he is entitled to anything of me.
Exactly.
And one of the girls, not the girl he was hitting on, another one, the roommate, she, I don't know if she felt entitled to, like she had to. I don't know if she was
Mhm.
thought more was going to happen. I really, really don't know. But, I've had that happen a few times, right? And I've
Yeah.
even had guys like say, "Oh, I want to do this for you." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you. I'm good."
Right. It's like
And
we
then
can
I
do it for
joke,
ourselves.
yes. And then I joke, I'm like, "Damn it. Why didn't my mom have to give me moral?"
For sure. No, but it's like sometimes it's scary, especially when it comes to men in those situations. So I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need your $12 drink. I can get my own drink. So that was like a big part of just having my own and being able to do for me. I think it's great that your mom instilled that in you. So I'm happy for that. I think we should push that down to our family members too. Like it's really
Now,
important.
oh, absolutely. And I feel like, and I, try and tell my nephews that as well. Like, if you're interested in a woman, you need to be a gentleman. Do never expect anything. Like, if you're taking her out to dinner, if you buy her a coffee, if you do this, she doesn't have to do anything except
Say
be
thank you.
company. Yeah, say thank you. And guess what? If you're bad company and she bounces, that's your fault.
Yeah,
Like, I feel as, Tia J, is my responsibility to be like, I love my nephews. I would do anything for them, but I'm not going to let them be little assholes.
yeah,
Like, it's my
that's important.
responsibility to be like, no, I
Yeah,
don't think so. Right. But also with my nieces too, it's like, you don't take advantage. If somebody wants to buy you something, that's one thing, but you need to know what, you can do for yourself.
yeah,
Never feel like you need somebody to do something for you.
that's it.
That is, I think, the difference, right?
Yeah,
Um, you
yeah,
were
it's a
talking
necessity.
about,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think a lot of women get stuck in situations too because they're not financially capable of getting out of those situations too. So I think that that's why it's really important to be able to have your own and, not count on men for everything. Like I've even seen when I was in college, one of my girlfriends' father ended up leaving the mom for another woman, and she was like a stay-at-home mom living off the guy. Then she was like screwed, like she didn't have anything. She didn't have anything saved because she was, in that situation. Or women who are in abusive relationships, if
I
they
was
have no
about to say that.
money to get out of these situations, and it's really unfortunate, and they have to stay or feel that they're stuck when there's other outlets to get help, besides that. But I would never want to feel or want my kids or my nieces or nephew, whatever, whoever, to feel like they have to be stuck in a situation because they're not financially independent or don't have the resource, or are afraid to ask for help. And that's like a whole nother thing too.
That's like, you literally are going into what I wanted to talk about, because we were talking, at the beginning you were talking about um the trauma that many of us have around money, and everybody, like, some people don't. That's cool. I admire you. That's amazing. But if you're listening to this, you probably have a little bit in some way or capacity, right? Whether it's being divorced and still depending on the money from an ex, whether it's being in an abusive relationship. And abusive relationships can come in many ways, right? It can
Mhm.
be physical, emotional, mental, like it could encompass all or encompass one thing. But I think whether as people, right, we need to realize like what our own power is to be able to take whatever charge that we can, you know. And if you're in an abusive relationship, and we actually have not talked about this in any of our financial like conversations, how do you, and if you're not the person to say and be like, I have no idea, but
Yeah.
when we're talking about trauma and money, and you are in an abusive relationship, how do you even start to be able to save money or become, so you don't have to say, I can't, my only option is to stay because of finances?
Yeah. I think if you're capable of opening your own accounts, like having your own instead of depending on somebody else to be in charge of the finances, and that'll be a good start. And having your own savings account that's in your own name, because there's also financial abuse out there. So that's where somebody else is in charge of the money and they're only giving you a little bit or give you and nothing, or you don't have access to these accounts. So that's another form of abuse too. So it's kind of like it's just having things in your own name if you're able to. Like, it depends on the situation you're into, because maybe you're not allowed to, which would be crazy, but sometimes that is what it is. So it's more of like trying to get your own, having your own, and hopefully you're able to put some money to the side to have there. Or if you have to like not have an account, or you have access to money that you can like put somewhere in the house that you have, that's your own space, or secretively, I would recommend that too, if you think that's something you're going to need in the future. Or also just confide in people. I think a lot of people are scared to talk about things that they're going through, whether that be abuse, or even with their finances, or with a lot of things that we're going through in life. So it's kind of like just talking to people and being open about what's going on, because you never know who can help you. People definitely want to help, but I think a lot of people are just embarrassed sometimes, or scared to present to other people what they're really going through. They don't want to be a burden. So it's kind of like we need to move past these narratives too, and normalize like really talking to people and asking people for help if we need it.
We're doing the whole intake form, and where I always ask people what they would like the interview to focus on. And one of the things you were saying is the unique challenges that so many people face. Um, and obviously we've talked about when you're single and getting married and having that discussion, right? I don't want to be too far away from the mic because I'm just so like pumped and like
Yeah.
and then we've talked a little bit just in regards to being in an abusive relationship, whether it's financial and all of these things. But what other type of things? Is there any sort of like financial trauma that you've seen consistently across the people that you've worked with, or is everybody just completely different?
No, everybody's situation is different. Like, it's not one situation over another, and even the financial journey is going to be different for every person. But I think a big one that I've been seeing, especially among people close to me, is like if you grow up with not a lot of money, what I've seen is that people have the tendency to spend money, or want to showcase, hey, I'm not poor anymore. I don't want to feel that feeling that I felt when I was younger if they didn't have a lot of money. So it's kind of like that's like a trauma response too, to kind of like just money comes in, money needs to go out. Or like I see too much money in my bank account, I don't know how to handle that and I need to spend it, versus like saving it. So I think that's a big one that I've seen a lot happening. And I think spending money on love is a big one, that a big financial challenge. And I've seen with parents, let's say if you work a lot, you kind of feel like you're neglecting your kids. So maybe you'll spend more, buy more things for them, or toys for them, or spend money on them. So it's kind of like navigating the emotional side of money too, when it comes to what you're going through in your life, and what that really means, and how those habits are reflected in how you spend your money. So yeah.
Well, I get that because we're in the midst of a wedding, right? And we didn't want it like that was for us a big thing. We didn't want to go into debt for a wedding. So we've
Hmm.
been paying everything cash. Um,
Yeah.
because the last thing that we want, and look, we're already in this situation, right? Minus the whole thing. And if anybody wants to sponsor Wine Chisme podcast, please feel free to reach out, right? But no, I mean, but truly, the thing is we didn't want to start our marriage in debt.
Yeah.
Um, we've
I'm
worked
with you.
really hard. I've worked really hard, although I'm, with trying to make sure that I'm not going into more like, paying credit cards, but I can't pay them off. Obviously, I have limited funds as things are going.
Hmm.
But still trying, with my fiance is still trying to save money and us still trying to make sure that we're staying within budget for this wedding. And shout out to my family and his family who have been tremendous help
Yeah.
because it's not something we asked for, it's something that they've wanted to do for us in regards to help, and we appreciate that so unbelievably much. But we still have things that still have to stay within our budget, and
Hmm.
it's not been easy. I'm not gonna lie, it has not been easy. As soon as you say wedding, everything doubles in price, and I want to
Yes.
punch people in the face.
You need to yeah, take that out of the conversation.
Oh my gosh. But, ultimately, um, that we know what's best for us, and everybody
Hmm.
has to determine what's best for them. But we
Exactly.
also knew that we didn't want to start our lives in debt. our
Mhm.
lives together in debt. Um, I like what I know you're like one of the other things that you're saying is you're still learning the things about trauma of money. And are you taking a in money class right now?
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
in the certification process right now. So that should be closing up. By the time this episode airs, I should have my certification. So
Wow. Okay. So what are the things that they're sharing with you when it comes to that class? Because I mean, I know that we've all had it. We've talked about it in previous episodes, but I didn't realize that there was something like really focused on that to be able to take a class.
yeah,
And so can you share a little
sure.
bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really focusing on a lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with internal family systems. So they talk about a lot about our parts inside, like the things that we think, which just relates a lot to our money beliefs and limiting money beliefs. So there's parts of us that believe certain things, and we need to like, and I think those parts like affect our nervous system. So it talks a lot about, our nervous system and somatic exercises. It gets really into like meditation. And that's why I really love the holistic part of it and the holistic part of Blissful Vida, because it's not only about, I can tell you, Jessica, get on a budget. These are your numbers, stick with this. And, you might not be able to do it because there's so many other factors coming in. So it really touches upon that, like our own beliefs and how that affects our body and emotional stuff. So that's like the trauma part within us. So how to like navigate that space and release that and, replace those beliefs with positive money beliefs so you can like do better with that. And it also talks a lot about society and how a lot of the things are ingrained in us from society and capitalism and consumerism. And, they want us to be out here spending our money and we're just buying into it and feeding into it. So it's kind of like, hey, let's make our own decisions when it comes to things and what we want to spend our money on, and don't feed into what society is telling us what we should be spending our money on. So that was like a lot of it. I'm still going through it, but I think that was a lot of it. And it's like made so much sense that it's not just about the numbers. So it's a lot more has to do with like our feelings, what we think, what we believe, how we grew up, and what society is throwing at us all the time as well. Like through social media is big, huge, like all the ads and what influencers are promoting for us to use and want. Like the Stanley Cup being, I don't know how much that thing is now. Like, it's like, why is that so expensive? Just to have like a thing that holds water. So, but people are in lines for like
Girl,
hours
right?
and hours trying to buy these things. So I'm like, okay, well, they got you. But it is, I don't know, but that's a psychological thing too. So, or if that's something that really brings you joy and brings you bliss, then I'm for it. But it's just like you said, for every person is different on what they want to do with their money. It's just more, I just want to promote being conscious and intentional with your money. And if you have goals, then you really need to know what they are and come up with a plan to reach them. And if you're not attaining them, then you really need to dig in to what it is that's holding you back. And that just stems from, let's look at your money stories. And I think that would be a really helpful tool.
Do you think, because as you're saying this, I'm like thinking of myself, right? What can
Yeah.
I do? Things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, maybe I need to really define both, what my blissful vida is. Because
Hmm.
I think it's very similar to yours in regards to just being able to do something knowing I have the money. I don't need to be a millionaire, right? And let me tell you the difference between me and my fiance, right?
Yeah.
I'm of the mindset of like, and let's just talk about like the most outer rim things like the lottery, right? I'm of the mindset of if we won
Yes.
$20 million, you invest it right. Yeah, you're gonna get half of that. You invest it right, you're living off the interest. You should be okay with that money. He's like, no, I need $400 million. And I'm like, what the heck are you gonna do with that? That's more money you're ever gonna spend in your lifetime. Like, you know, and I don't know where he gets it. Like I'm just like, but
Yeah.
then I also think of the how we describe ourselves, right? He says we're poor, and I'm like, we're not poor. We live in San Diego. We don't have a problem paying our rent. We don't have a problem buying food. We're not poor. Are we rich? No. We're rich in love. We're rich in other things.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
we're not poor. Like we have adjusted our lifestyle. I cook so much more. We don't go out to eat as much.
Yeah.
But we can both cook. So we're good, right? We don't have a dog walker. I'm the dog walker.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm the housekeeper and but those are things that I'm like, okay, as I'm building my business and he's
Hmm.
out working and we've cut back on stuff, like how can I contribute in other ways to ensure that we're to try and keep our home happy, right? Like what are the
100%.
things, yes, to keep our peaceful home that maybe not, we're happy, but sometimes I'm sure we want to, knock
Yeah.
each other out.
But I'm
But
in the same boat as you with that because, like I said, I left my job to pursue this full time. And I have my savings, but my savings is only going to last so long if I don't bring in income. And I'm currently not bringing in too much income right now. So we are living on a minimal budget, especially for me. And how we said before, my Blissful Vida is not living paycheck to paycheck, not looking at my bank account when I want to buy something, but I have to do that right now, currently, because that's the situation I'm in for now. I don't foresee that for the future, and I don't see that for you either. Like, I know we're doing our thing, we're learning, we're growing our businesses, and they will be successful when they're successful. But for now, we have to cut back on certain things, and I'm glad you have someone who's supporting you on this journey, as I have my husband. And we do have to cut back on things. We were going out to dinners too. Now our date nights is Netflix and chill. Like, that's our date night. And we're here cooking and doing the same things. And it's okay. It is an adjustment, but it's just something we have our vision in line. Like, our Blissful
yeah,
Vida is there. We see it, right? So these are the things we have to do right now so that we can get there. So that's the only thing, is like, even with anybody I work with too, it's like, yes, what is your vision of that Blissful Vida? What do you have to do right now to get there? What are the things that you have to sacrifice right now? Like, it's not saying we never go out to fancy dinners. Like, we do it for birthdays and Valentine's Day. Like, okay, that's good enough for right now. It's not going to be forever. But I know you were going to ask a question. I'm sorry. I just went on
oh,
my
no, no,
rant.
no. I mean, I totally agree with what you said. I mean, that's always such a huge thing. And I agree. Like I said, my blissful vida is very similar to yours, except I want to travel a lot more because I
Me
want
too.
to travel to all the wine countries. I want to
Yeah.
drink wine all across the world.
Yes. Travel is definitely in mine too. So I'm with you. Maybe we go together.
Yes, yes. I'm like, you got to work. Okay, bye. No, I mean,
Awesome.
I want him to enjoy life as well. And
Yeah,
that's part of it. And
that's
it's
part of
always
it.
interesting to see how it changes when you meet somebody, right? Because 3 years ago, this wouldn't, I mean, I've been like, whatever. I
Hmm.
don't, and now that I have a partner in life, it's changed and it's okay. And I think that's the other thing is we need to know it's okay if
Yes.
that changes. Like it should change. What was gonna be at 20 or 25 is not what I think now at 46. That's
Right.
okay. It changes, it evolves, and that's perfectly fine. I know we've kind of
Exactly.
touched on a lot of things, and I want to make sure I respect your time and I want to make sure you also get in everything that you wanted to get in. So if there's anything that I didn't ask or anything else that you want to share, please do so.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon, I love that your goal is to get married and pay for it in cash and not go into the marriage with debt. And that was ours as well. So I didn't say that before either. When we got engaged, I was like, I don't have anything saved for the wedding. He didn't have anything saved for the wedding either. So we're like, we're not going to get married until we can pay for our wedding in cash. And that took 3 years. So I think that's like really commendable. But I was like, we just have to wait. I don't want to get in debt because I was already in debt. So trying to get out of debt, I was like, I don't want to pile on more on top of that. And we got married in New York City, and our wedding cost $13,000. So we were in budget. I think that's great for New York City. The only thing I do regret, and I guess I want to give you advice, my dream dress cost $400 more than the dress that I got. And I was so stingy, or like, I don't say stingy. I was just like so committed to sticking to the budget that I didn't splurge that $400. And in retrospect, hindsight's 2020. I really do wish I got that. Like, what's $400 in the grand scheme of things? So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I regret, but I'm happy that we paid for it all in cash. And I think if you have goals like that, you don't want to have the burden of debt. It's fine to have that goal or to wait until you have that. It took, my mom's like, when are you guys getting married? You've been engaged forever. I'm like, we'll get married when we get married. But, you know, we had to do it in our time. Like, just because we were engaged didn't mean we had to get married that fast, but we wanted to make sure that we were in a good financial position to start our marriage. I'm not gonna say debt free because I got a debt a year after that, but almost debt free. So it was like
Yeah.
a good place to start with, like a clean slate. So if that's your goal and that's the things that you want to do, I love that for you. So I'm happy that that was a decision you made.
Oh, thank you. I will say that. I mean, it definitely helps, but that doesn't mean that I still don't get stressed out because trying to keep it within budget is really, really hard,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to food, right?
Yes.
Uh, and thankfully, like, you know, we're doing we're buying our liquor at Costco, and he's a bar manager of multiple restaurants. So we already, like, one of the guys is gonna buy, like, we figured things out,
Yes.
right? Instead of a cake, we're doing homemade churros and ice cream, but they're doing the churros,
Yummy.
making the churros on site because I'm not a big cake person,
Okay.
neither is he. We can, but I love churros.
No.
I don't
Yeah.
like all of the things. I just like it plain. Like, I don't
No,
like
but you're
all the
customizing the wedding to you guys, which I think makes it so much more special. So that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So I mean, and my dress. My mom was like, I'm gonna buy your dress. I bought your sister's dress. I want to buy it. And then my other sister's like, well, I want to help as well. Love my dress.
That's so important. It's so important.
Love my dress.
I love that. Oh,
But
can't wait to see it then.
yes, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, we might have a couple of things, like actually maybe one thing we might have to, but like I said, we've been really good and trying to keep it all. And he's kind of just like, he basically was like, we talked
Yeah.
about it. Here's the budget. Just like,
Yeah. Have fun with that.
yeah, have fun, do what you want to do. I just want to show up. And
Yeah.
when it's really important, then I'm like, hey, I need you to do this. And he does,
Yeah.
like tasting the food or, hey, I want, like, let's do, he was actually the one who said, why don't we do churros instead? And I was like, yes, yes, let's do churros instead.
I love it.
I had no hesitation.
That's
But
amazing.
if people want to be able to talk to, like I said, like getting out of debt is one thing, but I think the core of figuring out what your trauma, your money trauma is
Yeah.
so huge. And I don't even think like it's something that we really even talk about. So if people want to be
No.
able to reach you and
Yes.
talk to you and work with you and all of the many things, how are they able to do that?
Yeah, I have my website up and running. So it's www.myblissfulvida.com. And I'm on Instagram at myblissfulvida. So you can reach out there. And I have a free money mindset workbook on my website. Uh, so that would help you uncover your money stories, your money trauma, and help you reshape them and shift them into positive money beliefs that would help you. So it'll help you uncover what some of those things are. And it's free. You can get that on the website. And I would love it if more of us really do the work so that we can move past this and just do better with our money. So I'm here
We
for it.
are the largest group uh of outside of Caucasians, outside of like we are the I don't because we are the largest group of we are the largest ethnic group in the United States. I'm like trying to figure out what I wanted to say. We are
Yeah.
the largest ethnic group in the United States. With that comes a lot of power. But as we know, right? And I think as so many more people are discovering now, unfortunately, money is power. And we need to harness that for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important that we harness it so and not feel embarrassed to have the conversations because you could be in so much debt making $500,000 a year. So whether
For
you're
sure.
making $500,000, whether you're making $50,000, there is a place for you at this table.
Yes.
And we want you to take your seat. That's what I want to say.
I really, really do. And I just want to like clarify debt in terms of like there's good debt and there's bad debt. If your debt is not making you money, then it's bad debt. So there's a lot of rich people leveraging their debt, for business or buying property and doing all that, like having a mortgage and making money off of that for real estate investing is a different thing versus having credit card debt. So I just want to clarify that for everyone. And just to mimic what you're saying, like it's time for us to step up and show out, and let's do the things because we're capable, we're worthy. And I think that's another limiting belief. It's kind of like we see what we saw, growing up, we're like, this is just our life. Like, this is how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be struggling. And that's not true. So I would love it if more of us, move past that and let's get our mind right and our money right. And let's do the things. So I'm definitely here for it.
Mi gente, please make sure to follow Erika. Share. I think that's the other thing that we don't do enough, right? Like we hear it ourselves, but like I know you're thinking of somebody that needs to hear this message. I know you're listening and you're like, oh, I needed this. I know somebody else who needs this, right? Share the message, because the more that we share it, the more we can be empowered and empower ourselves and really take a hold of our lives. So make sure to follow Erika, do the things that you need to do, share with, if you want to share what your story is, please do. If you don't, that's okay. But whatever it is, just know that you're worthy of living your best life and living your blissful vida.
Yes. So here's to our blissful vida.
Here's to our, I finished mine, but I'll still. Thank you, Erika,
Thank you.
so much. And
You're
until next
welcome.
time,
Thank you.
Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.